What's up, everybody? How are you doing today? I wanted to talk for a minute about hyperbole versus, I guess, dynamic range. Hyperbole is basically the exclamation mark. Everything has to be intense, and all the news channels have to have breaking news no matter what it is, and it wasn't always like this. It really did start with the OJ thing, where OJ was running from the police, and it was covered 24/7, and the trial and everything else. And from that day forward, it just became constant breaking news. Same with 9/11. All the things that have happened through history have caused us to just need to get the most attention, and the media is no exception. But I remember seeing a show a while back. Somebody did a video about it, and they compared it to the loudness wars of the 80s and 90s, where record companies were trying to outdo one another by getting the loudest possible music, and which meant that they basically had to eliminate what they call dynamic range, which is what gives music its sound separation, its sound staging. And I'm a musician as well as a major music fan, so my home stereo, has to be facing the speakers the right way and everything. None of that matters. What stereo you have, what speakers you have, if the sound source is shit. But back in the day, in the 70s and the 80s, people actually put pride into their music, and everything was recorded analog. But eventually, all the masters would get just, compressed and annihilated in order to try to compete with one another. And what it did was it took a lot of the soul out of the music. And what's happening with hyperbole in the media, it's the exact same way. If you turn on the TV or you read a paper or whatever and it says breaking news, you're looking on a website, do you really think of it as anything important? If it said urgent news, do you think you would really take it seriously? I mean, we've grown immune to these things, and they really don't mean much. So what's happened is the media has gone from, bias is of course universal, but it has to be that way. It's always going to be that way. People want to get into their tribes, and they want to have people report to them that they agree with. So what happens is we sensationalize stories that otherwise shouldn't be even bothered with, and ignore the important stories. And everything becomes about shock value. How much attention can we get people to give this? New at 11, this is coming, that's coming. And what happens is, in the end, the whole thing falls apart. Everybody loses credibility. And we are here right now at that point. The point where at one time there were Walter Cronkites in the world. News was respected. There were journalists who actually traveled overseas. And I won't belittle groups like Vice, for example, where they actually do send reporters over. But in some would say, in their sake, they're actually irresponsible in some ways, in some of the stories they've done, in the sense of Vice has admitted that it's all about the money. They've, I won't go into the details, but, Vice News, they've had ups and downs, but they're one of the only, the only place where anybody who sends journalists anywhere anymore. But the point being that at one time there was journalism, there was true reporting, and it was not biased. It was in the 1980s when they eliminated the non-bias clause, basically. It was during the Reagan administration where they said, okay, you can be as biased as you want. You don't have to give equal time to either side. And what this did was allowed leverage with whoever has the most money, and then you've got the Rupert Murdochs against the George Soros of the world, and everybody's fighting and getting into their tribes and fighting among one another and being completely distracted by the intensity of what's going on. But in reality, it's not as intense as we want it to be. So we have to dress it up with hyperbole, with breaking news and urgent, must see, and like I said, going through the ages and watching this kind of grow out of nothing, and watching how marketing has changed. It makes me it makes me wonder, where are we going to go from here? Are we ever going to be able to pull our heads out of our asses? And I think most people are able to see through a lot of the bullshit, but it's frustrating when you want to actually get the information of what's going on in the world, but you can't give them balanced journalism. And even AP, Associated Press, which is where I used to go for just headlines, see what's going on. Every morning I click on AP first. If there's a nuke that went off, if there's an earthquake, if there's a bunch of deaths, it will be on AP. So regardless of who believes what news, that's where most of the other media gets their sources first too. So if nothing happened, I get, just walk away from it. And the point being that 90% of the time, 99% of the time, nothing happens in a day. And so we get bombarded with these stories about lost children, the dangers of strangers, and poison candy, and ricin, and this senator's being targeted, and these are happening, and this is happening, and we think, oh my God, the world's falling apart, this nation is falling apart. But then you step back and think, okay, so a few people died today, and maybe there was this attack, and this weirdo, and this guy crashed into this school bus, or whatever it might be. And then you think, okay, well, there's 1/3 of a billion people in this country. Do the math. I mean, statistically, the media is desperate to cling on to any story they can find. And no matter how non-important it is, or even non-gruesome or non-harmful, they will make it as bad as they can be. It can be. I would say that there's some good journalism. I don't want to get into the details and the morals and values of media, because that's not really what even this video was about so much. There's just as much of this hyperbole on YouTube, and there is a lot of sensationalism and propaganda in every realm, whether it be some new discovery about power, they're hiding free energy from us, and I'll show you how later, or these are the new discovery on the alien. The first thing that happens, some channel posts, oh, alien ship discovered, and then you look at the science of it and look at what they're reporting. You're like, oh my God, how can people create a story of complete bullshit out of thin air and then hype it all up? But really, some of the worst offenders are the people like the Logan, Jake Pauls of the world. They're just really not contributing anything of value. Yet that's what people like. So who is anyone else to say, right? I'm hoping the kids of the future are a little bit smarter, but ultimately kids will be kids, and they're going to be the media consumers in a lot of ways, and that's why ultimately the media of the future for the adults is going to be the same thing. Basically cartoon-like sensationalism of stories to make people fall in line and pay attention. And I'm not buying it. It's complete bullshit. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I just wanted to make a video basically expressing my view of how we've made everything more intense than it has to be. And if you look at the world for what it really is, there's a lot of shit going on. But we can step back and say, okay, how much of it is manufactured intensity? People running around the newsroom. Oh my God, there's this report and this happened and that happened, and you find out, it's all a story, and it's kind of sad. But we want the drama in our news, and we got it. It's like wrestling. Talk to y'all later.